The White House took forever to at least pretend to take coronavirus seriously, but that does not mean that everyone in the government, everyone who was in a position to safeguard us, wasn't taking it seriously. In fact, the U.S. Army was. Back in early February, they assessed that the coronavirus could kill as many as 150,000 Americans. This is a document that was put together on February 3rd, like 5 or 6 weeks before Trump was talking seriously about coronavirus. They had a, quote, black swan assessment that's effectively like a worst-case scenario, that 80 million Americans could be infected, 15 to 25 million could require care, 300,000 to 500,000 could require hospitalization, and 80,000 to 150,000 could die. And so I think it's important to remind you that that was put together on February 3rd as a worst case scenario, and what Trump has labeled as evidence that they would have done a great job has potentially more deaths than what they thought the worst case scenario would be on February 3rd.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not convinced that Trump doesn't know that less is more in this case. Like, I'm not convinced he knows that fewer deaths is good. But I mean, to me, when the U.S. Army is giving these precautions and these warnings, early February is absolutely unconscionable that we didn't take action before this. This should be the question and the only question that Trump receives in every single press conference, over and over and over again. Is it true you were told February 3rd that coronavirus could kill as many as 150,000 Americans? Yes or no? Next question. Same thing. That's it. I just want accountability on one thing.
Exactly. And it looks like, I mean, I think his numbers are down overall in terms of people's evaluation of how he's doing, which makes sense. You know, 1,000+ people are dying literally every single day. We'll give you updated numbers on that. Actually, I had written down in the production document that 339,596 cases had already been logged. But that, I mean, that's from an hour ago. So it's like 15,000 cases, more than that already. So bear that in mind. But yeah, you know, they put that together on February 3rd. In late February, Trump was still tweeting things like, the coronavirus is very much under control in the USA. A few days later, he said the number of cases was going down and would be close to zero in a few days. And the weird thing is, he spent the first few weeks of talking about coronavirus saying, you know, I shut down travel, it was very strong, and we're getting a lot of credit for saving lives by doing that. Which, as the days have gone by, has always seemed like a really weird thing to say as the case count continues to skyrocket. But just yesterday, his son wrote that thank God they took early aggressive action. There's more than 1/3 people that have it. How could you still be patting yourself on the back when clearly the efforts that you took did not succeed? Or if in your view they did succeed, then what's the alternative case? Do you think that there would be 50 million people already that would be infected? What weird perspective to have to think that the limited stuff that Trump did as he continued to play down the disease was successful in literally any way?
No, absolutely. I mean, and this is the point. You know, there is no number that Trump will not claim victory around. Literally 2, 3, 4 million people could die. And he'll be like, listen, at least it wasn't like 5 Hiroshimas. Like, you know what I mean? He doesn't, you know, he will always claim victory.
I think that would still be more than 5 Hiroshimas, but I get your point.
I know, it would be like 12 Hiroshimas.
He wouldn't know.
Like, he wouldn't know. I don't know. I'm not the president. But what I do know is that there will be a constant barrage of misinformation from here until November. And it's like, how do you play it? Like, how do we actually like have conversations with people that brings them back to reality? How do journalists cover this accurately? I've been constantly wondering, like, where's Tom Steyer's money right now? Where's Bloomberg's money right now? Can we get at least a few ads on television that are just like, this is a lie? I know there have been some, right? But I want to see constantly, like, we need to change the discussion. This is actually life or death.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he was going to spend all that money, remember? And then he just decided he liked having the money more than spending the money. I think that's what it was. Now, really fast, we have been pointing out for a while now what Trump said to deceive the public and to waste time on coronavirus. But I want to be very clear that obviously what he was doing was at least as important. I think that what the president says is important because I think a lot of people follow his lead, including governors who still haven't put lockdown orders into effect. But I also want you to know what the government was doing and was not doing when, again, the army was warning about this black swan assessment back on February 3rd. So let's see. On Sunday, the AP reported that the government largely failed to place bulk orders of N95 respirator masks, ventilators, and other medical equipment vital to those treating coronavirus patients until mid-March, according to federal purchasing contracts. The Washington Post reported that the Trump administration received its first briefing about the outbreak in China on January 3rd. So, they waited 10 weeks, at least, probably slightly more than that, 10 to 11 weeks to place bulk orders. And the thing is, like I just criticized their travel ban, and they keep saying that that worked, even though, you know, thousands and thousands of people have died. The idea that you were going to completely stop it from getting in the United States, considering how contagious it is, was never going to work. What you needed to do was prepare for it to get here. And that they did not do. They literally wasted months. I've been saying that colloquially, but no, they have literally wasted months before doing what they needed to do, which was accept that it's going to get here, accept that it's going to spread, but make sure that we have the resources and equipment necessary to weather the storm once it hits.
I mean, I can't even, like, that goes into the, like, cannot compute because it makes me so angry column, of which there's a lot of information, you know, like the fact that people are bidding on respirators and bidding on masks, and that we are sending masks abroad, you know, like to the highest bidder and outbidding other countries. The whole thing is just, I mean, it is the free market gone haywire. And I think, you know, in terms of, I mean, I don't know. I just think, like, Trump in February, how many times did he go golfing? Where was he, right? Like, if this is actually a war, where were you? And the U.S. military and the U.S. Army, like, as much as I don't believe in militarism around the world, and as much as I think we need to redirect so much money from our military into actual public services, they issue these warnings all the time. And another warning that they have issued for years now is about climate change.
Yes, I was hoping that's what you're going to say.
Yes, and it's like suddenly, you know, we're supposed to you know, love the military, honor them, honor veterans, and if you don't, you are an anti-American, you know, whatever. You're horrible. And yet, when it comes to the warnings that they are issuing, when it comes to their expertise, when it comes to them saying, hey, listen, it's not like, you know, terrorism, it is climate change, it is pandemics like this that we are unprepared for, suddenly we can disrespect them all we want.
Yeah. Yeah. Just a little bit more information about the slow response, because I think, look, the worst thing that will come out of this is the fact that far more people will get sick and far more people will die. But the fact that he will also probably evade 99% of the accountability for it is pretty bad too. So the contracts that we talked about earlier, those don't require the company to begin delivering masks until the end of April. That, by the way, is after, theoretically, the pandemic will have peaked, according to some medical experts.
We hope.
We hope. I don't even know.
We're not even really seeing a plateau. So, I mean, I hope this is kind of like when this is a horrible analogy, but when you're on like a hike and your friend is like, no, I swear, like we're going to reach, you know, like there's a reservoir up there. We're going to reach the top. There's going to be a view. And you're like, no, there's not. I am sweating. It is hour 5. My sandwich has been eaten 3 hours ago. When are we getting to the top? I feel like we're on this long trek and no one is being honest with us about when we're going to get to the top.
One other thing I want to add to this is the fact that he's pitching himself as a wartime president, but also wants to imply that, like, we totally got this, we're going to be fine in like 2 weeks, which has always been so weird. That, like, this is the invisible enemy, which is terminology I think he uses to get the Q people all fired up. And then does basically nothing. And so that in terms of that leading from behind, one of the things he's been doing over the past few weeks is when governors are saying we don't have the personal protective equipment or ventilators that we need, he calls them complainers, as if they should just sit idly by as their citizens die, says that they should have stocked up more, and then says that the stockpile, remember Jared Kushner a week ago said, it's our stockpile. It's not the state's stockpile. It's ours, which mimics a lot of what Trump has been saying, that we're not supposed to be doing this. We're just a backup for them. Well, what Jared Kushner said has now become one step closer to the official position of the U.S. government, because take a look at this. Until Friday morning, the website of the Department of Health and Human Services, which maintains the stockpile, read, quote, "When state, local, tribal, and territorial responders request federal assistance to support their response efforts, the stockpile ensures that the right medicines and supplies get to those who need them most during an emergency." But midday Friday, hours after Kushner directly contradicted the language on the HHS website, the text was changed without explanation. Retroactively matching what Kushner said, the website no longer says states can rely on the stockpile, but now says it exists to, quote, supplement them. Wow. And so this, like, entitled, jumped up kid who I wouldn't put in charge of literally anything is now setting the stance of the federal government on emergency preparedness by a random thing that he Zuckerberged out during, you know, a press conference that he shouldn't have even been involved in.
Yes. And if you actually listen to that press conference and the little bit of substance that there was there, he talked about data and how much they were relying on data, and we're just relying on all the data from the hospitals to give us, which I guess is good, but only if that data gives you preparedness. What it sounded like was that they're only going to issue ventilators and masks and PPE if you can prove just how dire and desperate your situation actually is, versus like if you can predict, like everyone's predicting. The US Army predicted what was going to happen, right? We've been predicting and told when this will peak, how many will die. But instead, again, with the leading from behind, Kushner's saying, yeah, no, unless you can prove in your data that there's hundreds of people dying in your hospital, we're not going to give you anything. Yeah. It's like, but we're projecting how many hundreds of people are going to die. We know this because, again, of like math and science. No, the data. It's got to be the data, like the after the fact data. It makes no sense.
Yeah, they seem to think like, no, it's like a woman gets carted in, needs a ventilator, and they're like, okay, call up DC. Hey, could you send another one? No, that's not how it works.
Right, exactly.
And if you're a wartime president, the soldiers don't like go on patrol, spot a terrorist, and then call up, hey, could you send me a gun? I could probably use one right about now. Within the next 15 minutes or so, maybe you could prime it. I could use a gun at some point. That's not how it works.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.